Welcome back to the ADHD Kids Can Thrive podcast. I'm your host, Kate Brownfield, a certified ADHD parent coach, and I believe that families raising kids with ADHD can thrive. One of the most powerful ways we do that is by understanding ADHD more deeply. What's really going on in your child's brain, what's driving the hard moments, and what helps your family feel more steady and connected. Because the truth is, no child and no family walks this path in the exact same way, and you don't have to figure it out alone. I'm really glad you're here. I hope you learned something new today that you can carry straight into real life at home. All right, let's get into it. Enjoy the show. Today, I'm really honored to welcome Diane Gould to the podcast. Diane has spent more than 40 years working alongside vulnerable children, families, and neurodivergent individuals with a deep focus on autism and the complex pathological demand avoidance profile. With degrees in behavioral psychology and social work, she brings both clinical insight and a grounded, compassionate approach. Diane was diagnosed as autistic at age 65, and she went on to found PDA North America, along with its conference, to expand awareness, understanding, and real support for families. Today, she offers parent consultations and training rooted in empathy, clarity, and deep respect for lived experience. And she's also the co-author of the book, Navigating PDA in America, with co-author Ruth Feidler. I'm so glad she's here. Hi, Diane.
Go ahead.
I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Me too. I'm happy to be here.
This is great. Okay. So for our conversation today, we're going to talk about PDA, what it is, what it looks like, and you're going to clarify these mysteries that our listeners may have about what PDA is and how to support their child with it. We'll see. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
We'll see.
Okay. And as I told you offline, I'm starting to hear and see more parents who have children who are being diagnosed with ADHD. And part of their profile is also PDA. It could be other things too in the mix, but PDA is showing up as something being specifically called out in a child's diagnosis with ADHD in my case. So not always just autism and PDA. So I wanted you to join me today to kind of give us some more information about really what is PDA. So
Sure.
Let's start from the beginning. How do you define PDA?
And I think, like a lot of things in the neurodivergent landscape, the definition keeps evolving, just like with autism and just like with ADHD. And with PDA, it was first identified as kind of a subgroup of PDD, which was pervasive developmental delay back in the 80s, and autism was part of PDD. And it was a subgroup that was recognized as being differently than most of the kids who fit this classification, but stood out as very much like each other. And this subgroup, one of the characteristics was that they couldn't help avoiding everyday demands. And that's why it was named Pathological Demand Avoidance. So this was in the UK in the 80s. Over time, it evolved a bit. And there's specific characteristics we could get into. It was viewed as because then PDD went away. So it was viewed as an autistic profile by most people. And then some others said there's not enough research for us really to say that. So other people were saying, maybe you can be ADHD and be PDA. Some people are even saying it could be connected to anxiety, or some people want it to be a standalone classification. At PDA North America, that I'm the founder and executive director of, we now say that it's linked to autism and ADHD and often has other co-occurring conditions because there's not enough research to really No, in my mind, it's clearly a neurodivergence, but that's, my mind. And it's tricky because many people who are later diagnosed as autistic first are diagnosed with ADHD. And just from, interactions in our community, it looks like the majority of people are ADHDers, but who knows?
Yeah, and that's having autism and ADHD. And
Right.
then in that group, some of them have this PDA. Is
Yeah, I mean, in our community, the PDAers, we think there's probably more people in our community with both the ADHD and autism diagnosis than in
Yeah,
other communities. Even though I
okay.
think, that there's a large number of autistic people who are also diagnosed as having ADHD as well, just statistically.
Okay. But okay. So in your group, also have to have the PDA. How is that different than being oppositional?
It's totally different. I used to always say that oppositional defiant disorder was a garbage diagnosis and no one should ever have it because it's just describing what you see on the surface. However, some people have pointed out that in many communities in our country, ODD is the only diagnosis that's available and can link to services. And because in the Black and Brown communities, especially children, are much more likely to be diagnosed as ODD than have their neurodivergence looked at.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but they are very different. PDAers can't always make themselves do things they really want to do. That, let's say a kid who's been looking forward to a birthday party for weeks and then can't make themselves go, or a family vacation they planned, they've been excited, they've been packed, but they can't walk out the door. So that is a difference. Also, PDAers are known for not really appreciating hierarchy. So, first grade PDA kid might think that he should have the same respect as the principal because respect should be earned and a title or age shouldn't get respect. Where, ODD is often like rebelling against authority. PDAers don't. They're like, there is no such thing as authority. No one has authority over me.
Okay. So they're not rebels. They're not
Well,
up.
but they're free thinkers and outside the box thinkers and rebels in terms of like really wanting things to be more just or fair and not wanting to kind of play the games or acquiesce to things that make no sense.
Yeah, that's what I think of a rebel. Like they did want to do the opposite, or despite what the rules are, the
Mhm.
norms are, they don't want to
Yeah, so a
follow
PDA
them.
often does that,
Yeah.
does the opposite. To have autonomy, to like being told what to do and, having expectations of how to act triggers a threat response in PDA individuals in their nervous systems. And their nervous systems are very sensitive. So they go into fight, flight, or freeze when there's that threat to
Yeah.
autonomy.
Yeah. Okay.
We
Okay.
definitely look at PDA as a nervous system.
Disability,
Hmm.
highly sensitive.
Hmm.
So how does this show up like in the home? What is this looking like for parents who are listening who are wondering if their child has PDA? And if they do, what does that look like? I think parents struggle. Not all kids are PDA who don't
Totally.
want to follow the norms, right? So that's kind of
Absolutely.
the interesting dynamic here. I think for sure your child needs to be diagnosed properly by a skilled practitioner.
Maybe, but it's really hard to find someone who can diagnose, who understands nuanced presentations of ADHD and autism and understands PDA. And usually the the people that do are psychologists in private practice. So that can be much more expensive
Yeah.
than so going to kind of an agency or a hospital-based clinic, you probably won't find someone. It's getting better. So a lot of times we tell parents, use the PDA approach and if it's working, that's what's important because it diagnosis isn't really available to everyone. I
Okay.
mean, it's a hard one. And there are kind of characteristics that PDAers share, but the demand avoidance is a tricky one because there's so many reasons people avoid demands, executive functioning issues or just anxiety. So demand avoidance is only part of kind of the profile. And PDAers usually have kind of better social and communication skills than most neurodivergent people. And they use those skills to kind of disguise the problems they're having in kind of navigating the world. And that can be part of PDA. Also, PDAers often do act differently in one setting than the other. So often what happens and for PDA families is a child might mask in school, be very compliant and obedient, and then the second they walk in the door after school, have a full-on meltdown and fall apart at home. Or they're so overwhelmed and exhausted, they go to their room and they don't leave the room for the rest of the night because school used everything up.
Yeah.
Uh, and then, of course, the parents report this to school, and school says, "Oh, she's an angel. He's so compliant." They're so happy at school. And then, maybe say to the parents, "Well, do you discipline consistently? Is it a fix? Should we refer you to family therapy?" And that drives a wedge. And we used to say at PDA North America, because we use the statistics from the UK, that 70% of PDA children had difficulty attending school regularly. But we've just done our own survey of over 2,000 families that have a child who's PDA. And our statistic was 87% of PDA kids have difficulty going to school regularly. So that's a huge problem.
That is a huge problem. And is that a newer problem? Like, has the culture of school changed over the
Well,
decades that we're seeing this rise of school refusal?
no,
And
I
is
think people didn't really look before, maybe.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I don't really know long ago if kids just dropped out, or there was other options, or I don't know in the past.
Yeah. Well, in the old days, kids just dropped out. They were called
Yeah.
high school dropouts. Is that the behavior that you see with PDA kids? Like by the time they go to high school, they're just
No, there can be problems in elementary school too. I feel like middle school gets really hard because PDAers need someone to co-regulate. They have that sensitive nervous system. They need relationships with adults they trust to co-regulate. And once you start middle school, you've got a different adult in your life every
yeah.
hour. I think PDAers need more recovery time. So they need to miss more days. I think just schools get a little stricter as the kids get older, but sometimes schools refer elementary school parents to truancy court as well because of missed days. I mean, the irony is that PDA individuals in general are very social. So PDA kids want to go to school, even the ones that can't or it's really bad for them to go, but usually they want to. And many
Mhm.
PDA kids are afraid they'll get trapped if they go to school and if they're feeling really panicky because anxiety is a big part of being PDA. And if they feel panicked that they can't stay, they're afraid the school will discourage them from leaving. So
Yeah.
kids can't go to school.
So
Yeah.
is it important for a child who's got like autism, ADHD, and PDA as part of their private to get into special ed resources where they're going to get hopefully some better care as far as what they need to make it through the school day? If the school refusal is about 87% for kids
Yeah.
with a PDA profile, that's
Yeah.
significant.
It's very significant. And it many schools around the country say the kids don't qualify for 504 IEP because of kind of the academic potential of most of the kids, that the disability isn't really obvious. They don't, even for kids who have a medical diagnosis of autism, they say, oh, no, they're not autistic according to school. And even kids who don't attend or regularly who aren't able, sometimes schools will say their disability isn't impacting school academic performance, even though it is. So we have a whole education and training for schools at PDA North America. But schools are very behavioral. And for schools to serve PDA kids, it's really a paradigm shift. It's doing things differently. And that's a hard sell for lots of schools. Schools are really based on a behavioral model and a compliance model.
Yeah. And it's one size
Right.
fits all,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes
Unfortunately.
in special ed, it's just like a different size, but it's not individualized enough. But there are so many things the school can do to modify terms of modifications and accommodations for PDA students who are ADHD, autistic, but PDA. There's lots, and a lot is really collaboration and partnering with the student and individualizing and using their interests and giving them options to show learning. But often it's about too, like being flexible with starting time because kids might come late or attendance, but it's really all about connection and relationship.
Yeah.
That's what
That's the priority. Yeah. Yeah.
right.
You got the thing on the other side. The public schools don't get paid unless you show up as a kid, too. So that's like the business model tension that's going on there as well. At
It's
least in the state of California, that's the policy. So,
yeah.
that's the business side of school, too, which our kids always, they don't fit into always that business model that's going on, too. Okay, so I think this is where parents get concerned. And I did read your book and I really did like your book. And I agreed with a lot of things in your book. And I was pleasantly surprised to read your book based on what I see from what's being said on social media. I did feel like what's being represented in little tiny clips isn't really what's being represented in your book, right? So I thought that was really interesting. So I think the conference, your book, all of that just goes way deeper into what PDA is and the steps parents can really take and what this journey really is going to look like when your child is looking like this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think what I was seeing on social media is just like such a disconnect, I think, from a child who is neurodivergent and the steps they can take. But I know parents are confused. So, what are the steps? Like, if your child is able to make it through the day or look like they can make it through the day, but they have this collapse at the end of the day, and then it's showing up as school refusal somewhere along the line. Like, what do parents do besides just like collapse into all of that with their child?
Well, I think first I want to say I don't do social media, so I don't know what's really being portrayed, but I do know, and I'm grateful that a lot of families are first hearing that there is such a thing as PDA
Yeah.
on social media. So I'm happy about that. I tell parents, I do consultations almost every day with parents around the country, that we wanna bring down stress everywhere, and what you see at home is often caused by school and early in the day. So, I really want families to advocate with school, even if the problem isn't showing up there, because it's taking a toll. It's too stressful. There's so many expectations and demands in school. There's a whole social landscape that is really hard to navigate for most neurodivergent kids. And we want kids to be able to have fun after school. I mean, and see friends or go to karate or violin or right. So we don't want school just robbing all their energy and capacity. So that's a big part is bringing down the stress. And then these kids need connection. So having parents try to spend time connecting with their child. It might even mean joining and playing a video game, but really working on that relationship too, because that's what kids need is relationship and
Yeah.
connection more than anything.
Yeah. It makes me think, do you think it's the culture of our world right now? Like school days are longer than they used to be. There's less opportunity to do like use the right side of the brain. It's all logic based, rigorous.
It might
Like,
depend on the school, but for and I've worked in 14 schools in my career, but I mean, I think the basic structure of school really hasn't changed since the Industrial Revolution when it was developed our current structure, where it's kind of a compliance-based model.
well, the
Uh,
days are longer.
Mm.
Those kids are in school definitely longer, and there's less art, music, PE, all of those things have been reduced greatly.
I think
And
it
the
depends who you are.
and the last
Yeah.
20, 30 years. It's definitely more. It's not, there's no play base in school happening. It's limited.
Yeah.
More time has been given to math,
Plays-
English, history, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I
yeah,
wish kids weren't taught to read until, 3rd grade, and,
yeah, reading starts in kindergarten.
yeah,
It's now starting in pre-K,
yeah,
right?
with
Like
the
it
brain.
is more rigorous than
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was.
Well, yeah, it's just not developmentally appropriate.
Right.
You know, little kids are not supposed to sit in seats all day
Yes.
and listen.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there I think there are always, kids who struggled. I mean, I don't think any of that is, like, causing these issues, but because I think they were always there. I think there's kids who were always in trouble, who got, the paddle back then or, expelled. And then there's kids that internalize and you get very depressed and reach burnout. And PDA, we have both those different presentations of externalized and internalized presentations. And both are very concerning.
Yeah. Do you think so what's your professional view on that? Is it on the rise or is it just something, a behavior that's being noticed and recognized now?
Yeah, I think it's just the awareness and of the classification of, certain characteristics that go together. Other characteristics too, like PDAers are often very imaginative, love role play and pretend. They can be obsessive on people more than objects. They have a hard time, following routines set by others and doing what other people tell them. So there's kind of certain classifications of, you know, characteristics that kind of go together in this profile. They can be kind of dominating and controlling because of the anxiety and social relationships. But kids who need that autonomy, who need to kind of make their own path. And if someone tells them to do something, can't do it, even if they were going to do it before. That's
Yeah.
PDA.
Okay. So help me understand, like, what does this look like as a person with PDA grows up into an adult? What's
You
the
know,
path for them?
and PDA adults now didn't know they were PDA when they were children, right? Because, we've only been talking about it for maybe 6 years here. I think a lot of PDA adults work in places that they're their own bosses. I think some PDAers work part-time or flexible schedules. PDAers, like other neurodivergent folks, can have very strong interests. So if they are lucky enough to work in those interests, it goes a lot better. It's really hard to make yourself do things you're not interested in or things that are boring or repetitive. I think most PDAers do need people in their life who support them. So it doesn't necessarily have to be professionals, but they need a support system. I think our whole push on independence as a society causes big problems where most people live interdependent lives and have other people who
Yeah.
help. And PDAers need those other nervous systems and people too. I think because it's often a hidden disability, PDAers don't get the support that they need.
Yeah. Are they at risk, like other neurodivergent folks, of being marginalized, radicalized, drug
Right.
abuse, any
Suicide,
other mental health, suicide? Yes. Are they at risk of all of those things too as
all of
they?
those things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And burnout. I mean, PDA, people talking about autistic burnout. Many people have found PDA through burnout, an individual or parent whose child hasn't left the house in weeks, months.
Yeah.
And then they discover PDA because the burnout for PDA kids can be horrible, or adults
Yeah.
too. Just so vulnerable. And people aren't recognizing that this person is struggling.
Yeah. Do they think they're just depressed? I mean, that's,
Or
yeah,
I
like,
think it's
yeah,
internalized. They might just think they're shy, but happy. Yeah.
but not able to like but shut down. Yeah. That's it. Have like their window of tolerance is very small and sensitive.
Fluctuate.
Right.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what really confuses people about PDA individuals is how their capacity fluctuates. So, a teacher can say, "Well, what do you mean you're refusing to go to the assembly? You were fine last month in the assembly." Or why are you not doing your math quiz? You were fine on last week's quiz because stress is cumulative.
Yeah.
And because they're sensitive, the window of tolerance results in fluctuating capacity, and people don't understand it. And that's why kind of our behavioral system and what we do in schools of looking for the antecedent leads the adults kind of in the wrong direction because stress is cumulative and it builds up. So then they're just looking at the last straw.
Yeah. So what should parents do if, like, because we're kids, their primary job is to be a student. They're also a family member and a friend, right?
Yeah.
Those are their three jobs. Like, if they have, should the school, parents I'm listening to should really be partnering up with the school and getting the school on board with the child.
Not
And
always so possible. See, I don't know if I mean, most PDA families probably wind up homeschooling, or which we call unschooling, or it's more likely unschooling than homeschooling.
okay,
It's part of the education because schools aren't always willing to partner with parents and do the modifications they can. And I think, like, I don't know if a kid's job is to go to school necessarily. I feel in my head, I separate learning from going to school. I think learning can happen anywhere. And PDA kids generally love to learn. They have lots of interest and like to learn on their own. They're often, autodidactic. And school sometimes gets in the way of learning for them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would say learning is being a student. You don't have to be at school to be the student, but where you like, doesn't the, if you're homeschooling, you're still playing that role of student, right? Like learning or learning.
Learning. Yeah, to me, it's different. Student makes me feel like there's this hierarchy, but learning doesn't need a hierarchy.
Yeah.
You can learn in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I worry about the love for learning gets crushed in kids.
Yeah.
Because PDAs are generally like really fabulous to talk with. They're interesting. They have so many interests, but they need to have that autonomy. They need to be listened to. They can't really be squished down, you know? It just they need their autonomy respected. So most people in the world now, instead of calling PDA pathological demand avoidance, call it pervasive drive for autonomy, thinking that drive for autonomy is really the most important characteristic. So it's something for people to know.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of, there's high anxiety. I believe PDAs are neurodivergent and need support, and their neurodivergence can go unrecognized, but just how they interact with the world. And then PDAs do not respond to praise, rewards, consequences, any of the behavioral
Yeah.
approaches. And it's hard, especially with PDAs who are also diagnosed with autism. The treatment for autism, that's covered by insurance for most people is behavioral treatment. And that doesn't work. But, and for all the ADHD PDAers, if an executive functioning coach comes in and says, all right, we're making a schedule for you and you're going to write everything in your calendar book and here's your routine. That usually doesn't work either. Being told what to do doesn't work.
Yeah.
It takes
Well,
away.
and that's a myth for most ADHDers too.
Yeah, yeah. I know.
They don't call it PDA. That's like being ADHD. That it is a myth. I do want to say that
Mm,
if you just put the right tools in place, the ADHD person will
right,
not embrace all those tools and just get in
right.
line with that to be more productive. That is 100% myth. That is the solutions to ADHD are very complicated. It takes
Yes,
a lot of the parent getting on board and understanding that just as much as it does for what we're talking about with PDA.
right,
And a
right.
lot, and
That it's a mindset. It's not a strategy. It's a mindset. It's an
yeah,
approach based on understanding, partnering,
yes.
you know,
Yeah, and the kids I've learned too that have some PDA too, they also have learning disabilities and they have ADHD. Like it's not just one thing with
and
the
often
PDA
health
being called out. It's like
right.
several. The list is long, so it's complicated.
And often I think from my experience, when a kid or an adult is diagnosed as autistic, PDA, ADHD, then kind of that process ends. And for so many individuals, besides learning disabilities, there's all these health differences
Yeah,
and sleep differences and GI issues and
yeah,
autoimmune, and mobility. There's so many other things that impact daily life.
yeah, and it's
Uh,
different for each person,
Absolutely.
right? That's like none every child's so unique in how they show up in their neurodivergence. It's like
Absolutely.
very different. So
Yeah,
I think this was really good because it helps with the perspective of what PDA is and what that looks like. But I think parents also have to take a step back and look at all the parts to their child and all these things that are going on with them and make a plan around that
absolutely. And
as the whole person, the whole child. Because it's like,
absolutely.
There's
And
just not one solution,
no,
unfortunately.
no. And at PDA North America, we have webinars almost every Thursday on different topics. The first Thursday of every month, we have PDA 101, and that's free. Any of our virtual programs, if people can't afford the fee, we scholarship, no questions asked. We have our annual conference. We have like a fall now virtual conference. We have a provider listing on our website because we try to train professionals too. So, and we have school based trainings and ways to parents can connect with other
Yeah.
parents, and we have blogs. So I find for parents, being part of the PDA community is kind of the most helpful
Yeah.
because it's so easy to feel alone with this. These kids are very complicated and complex. Most of the advice the parents have been given is unhelpful or makes things worse. There's a lot of judgment out there for parents of neurodivergent kids. So, like, finding community that
Yeah.
makes all the difference and we have support groups as well.
Yeah. It's good. And I see though, it's all like you got to understand all the pieces. This is like
Absolutely.
one piece, probably for many children, where there's many things going on, and the parent is the best advocate for figuring out these pieces, right?
Absolutely, because the parents need to figure this out so the child can figure it out. Because I believe that self-understanding is really what makes life better. So we want people to know what they need, what they can handle, what they can't handle.
Yeah.
But it generally does start with the parents understanding that and then helping their kids.
Yeah. Putting the right resources in place. Yeah. So this was good, Diane. Thank
Oh,
you.
my favorite topic to talk about.